The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.
The Ministry of Finance of Georgia published a financial document. As of August 2023, the external debt of Georgia amounted to USD 8.15 or 22.52 billion lari. The state foreign debt decreased by USD 28 million or 193 million lari compared to July due to the strengthening of lari against USD and euro. The Asian Development Bank's loan ranks first in Georgia's foreign debt, which the country took to develop the largest infrastructure projects, followed by the World Bank Group. The WB credits are mainly used for infrastructure projects as well. The European Investment Bank is in third place. The speech of the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, was a very important visionary way forward, especially for the European Union itself. The President of the Commission focused on necessary internal reforms within the European Union in order to be well prepared for the upcoming enlargement. Paweł Herczyński, EU Ambassador to Georgia, stated on Thursday. Herczyński stated that everyone in the European Union hopes that Georgia's progress forward to the European perspective will move forward quickly. On September 13, 2023, the Monetary Policy Committee of the National Bank of Georgia decided to decrease the monetary policy rate, the refinancing rate. The NBG continues a gradual exit from its tight monetary policy with cautious pace. Accordingly, the Monetary Policy Committee reduced the monetary policy rate by 0.25 percentage points at the current meeting, taking into account inflation trends and forecasts. Other things being equal, the NBG will continue to normalize the policy rate only at a moderate pace. The monetary policy rate stands at 10%. This is The Checkpoints. I'm Elena Kvanchilashvili, author and the host of the show, and the Checkpoints team is ready to sum up Business and Economics Week for you. The Department of State designated individuals and entities to impose further costs in response to Russia's unprovoked war against Ukraine. All targets are being designated pursuant to an executive order which authorizes sanctions with respect to specified harmful foreign activities of the government of the Russian Federation. The department also designated a Georgian Russian oligarch and a Russian intelligence services officer to further address the Russian Federation's malign influence abroad. Otar Anzorovich Partskaladze was being designated pursuant to Section 1 for operating or having operated in the management consulting sector of the Russian Federation economy. Partskaladze is a Georgian Russian oligarch. He briefly served as a prosecutor general of Georgia from the Georgian Dream. Alexander Vladimirovich Onyshenko was being designated pursuant to Section A as well for being or having been a leader, official, senior executive officer or member of the board of directors of the government of the Russian Federation. Onyshenko is an officer of the Russian Federal Security Service, FSB. FSB officer Onyshenko likely assisted his associate Partskaladze in obtaining a Russian passport and possibly Russian citizenship. Partskaladze has fully taken on a Russian identity and routinely travels to Russia. Onyshenko and the FSB have leveraged Partskaladze to influence Georgian society and politics for the benefit of Russia. Partskaladze has reportedly personally profited from his FSB connection. Pursuant to Section AAI, the following two entities are being designated for operating or having operated in the management consulting sector of the Russian Federation economy. They are both Russia-based management consulting companies owned 50% by Partskaladze, LLC Moscow Business Brokerage, and LLC International Business Corporation.
We sanctioned over 150 entities and individuals today, and I'm not going to be able to speak to, I would say, for full details on any of those sanctions. I would refer you to the information that we released and the information that the Treasury Department released. But with respect to 150 individuals and entities, I'm not able to speak to them in detail from this record. We have always stood in solidarity with the people of Georgia and their desire to be a free and sovereign country with internationally recognized borders. And over the last 30 years, we have become strategic partners working together on towards our shared version of Georgia as a fully integrated member of the Euro-Atlantic family. And no individual sanction determination that we make changes that vision of ours or that relationship.
A week ago, before these sanctions came into force, the checkpoints talked to Edward Cho, an international energy security expert, on the effectiveness of Western energy sanctions imposed on Russia. Cho demanded a more proactive and consistent approach of the Western governments towards these sanctions. The Tbilisi International Conference Defeating Putinism hosted the interview. Mr. Cho, welcome to Tbilisi again.
Thank you.
Let us start with the conference. What do you see as the main value of this conference? What impact has it generated so far? Because this is an annual conference and it has been quite consistently in Tbilisi already.
Well, first of all, I should say that it's always a pleasure for me to be back in Georgia. I've been coming to this country on and off for 30 years. And I've also attended a lot of international conferences around the world because of my work. And I would say that this is one of the best organized conferences that I've ever been to. The quality of the discussion, the panelists that's attracted, and the quality of the discussion that takes place. I would say the value are multifold. At least from my perspective as one participant, that it is an opportunity to meet a lot of people in one place at the same time, meeting old Georgian friends, but also making new Georgian friends, and to have discussions. It also, for me, it's an opportunity to meet a lot of international participants from all over the world, particularly in Europe, but also in the United States and elsewhere, who are concerned about the same set of issues. And so it's very efficient. You meet a lot of people within the 2 days. I think for Georgia, maybe the value, and I'm a guest of the country, so I'm guessing, is that it puts a spotlight on Georgia, on the questions that matter to Georgia, the Georgian people. Georgia has been, I would say, fallen in terms of its international attention and standing over the last 10 plus years. And it is good to have people from around the world thinking about Georgia again in a serious way. And without discussions like this, Georgia may, as we would say, fall off the map because people are no longer paying attention to it. So it brings attention to Georgia, which I think is a good thing for Georgian people and the country.
You mentioned the quality of discussions. Do you think this quality, it would contribute to the quality of discussions if decision makers, like the members of the ruling party, also participated in these conferences?
Absolutely. I think I've been coming to this conference almost every year that has been held. I think it was disappointing the last year even the government did not show up as they had previously, and this year as well. I think the exchange of information, the exchange of ideas, no one should be afraid of that, and that this is healthy thing that you do in a democratic society, and we and they can contribute to our understanding at the same time their perspective on the same set of issues. And so I'm very sorry to see that once again they chose not to show up.
Thank you, Mr. Cho. Now let us switch to the international sanctions and energy sanctions in particular, considering your vast experience in the sphere, and let us evaluate whether these sanctions are working or not against Russia as it was anticipated before. Can we say that Russia has been deprived of the chance to use energy as a political tool against Europe and Ukraine?
Well, couple of different thoughts. I think the first one is that I was never very optimistic that sanctions by themselves are going to do the job of stopping Russia's aggression against Ukraine. Sanctions only work when they are paired with a good political strategy on how to achieve the political objective. Sanctions is a tool, but it's not a magic bullet that will solve everything.
Would you say it was a mistake, sorry for interrupting you, but would you say it was a mistake to bet on economic and energy sanctions? Because it seemed from the very beginning that expectations on the effect of these sanctions was quite different, that in the short term they could bring some results for Ukraine and for the war.
I'm not a politician. So I'm going to say something that's not very good politically, which is that sometimes elected officials in the West say things when they should know better. That they want to be seen as doing something and not nothing in response to Russia's terrible war against Ukraine. Sanctions was something that's easy to talk about. So they make public maybe promises that sanctions are going to work magically. That was not realistic. And they should have known better if they didn't already know better. But they want to appear to be doing something, and sanctions. So was it a mistake? And probably not a mistake, but maybe over-promising. Sanctions were necessary given what Russia has done. But it's a mistake to give the Western public the idea that all we have to do is sanction sanction Russia, I'm sorry. And that, well, it means that we don't have to commit the military resources necessary to give the Ukrainians the tools to stop Russia. We don't have to make some other maybe tough choices about what to do. So I wouldn't call it a mistake, but it needs to be seen in the totality of the situation, and it was never going to be, as I said, a solution by themselves. Now, I think everyone understands that now. You know, we've gone through 18 months of the biggest conflict in Europe since World War II. People understand now the need to support Ukraine for the long haul, militarily as well as economically. So I think we've crossed that bridge. On energy sanctions, which of course is I know a little bit more of than others, I would say a couple of things. They were very slow in rolling out. They talked about sanctions, sanctioning Russian oil and gas very early in the spring of 2022. There were some almost self-imposed sanctions because European companies, American companies chose not to buy Russian oil, for example, because of reputational risk. And then the EU announced that there was going to be an embargo put in place. And then the Americans came in late spring, early summer, before the G7 summit in Germany, that about an oil price cap. But none of those things actually happened until the end of the year. There were no details on how the oil price cap is going to be, at what level, how it's going to be enforced, and so on, until later in the year. And they didn't really take effect until the beginning of 2023, actually. So it took a long time. And that length of time also gave Russia the opportunity to prepare on how to avoid the sanctions. So I say that the first point is that it was too slow. And what happened instead was that the market got frightened in 2022 that the sanctions were real and the price of oil and gas shot up. So the result of which is, and this is not a fact that Western governments like to talk about or acknowledge, that in 2022, Russian oil and gas revenue were actually higher than in 2021. So you ask me, would the sanctions work? Well, maybe if they have done it sooner, if they had, designed them better, and I don't want to get into too much detail, maybe they could have. But then that was not what happened. And let's be honest, that was also didn't happen partly because Western governments, and I would say Washington in particular, was concerned about what it would do to global oil prices. But I think in a war, as I said during the conference, a crisis demands crisis response, and we should have been willing to sacrifice whatever the impact was on Western energy markets because there's a real war going on.
In one of the interviews, you called this approach or the strategy towards the international energy sanctions $1 less, 1 hour late approach.
Yes.
Does this approach still prevail? What has changed? Do the authorities or does the West learn from what you've just been elaborating on?
I wish I could be more confident, but I'm not. So what happened this year in 2023 was that after the very slow rollout of the sanctions and the fact that Russian oil export volume did not change very much, and that Russian oil revenue actually went up, the markets calmed down and oil prices started dropping at the beginning of this year. And to me, and I said this publicly, that was an opportunity to lower the price cap from $60 to a number lower than $60. Because $60 was actually fiction. Russian oil was already discounted at below $60. To say that you have a $60 cap was actually meaningless. So at that point, they maybe should have lowered it to $50 or $45, and that would have had an impact. And so that moment, that was an opportunity in my mind, and that moment came and went, and we congratulated ourselves on how well the $60 oil price cap worked, but in reality, that was not what happened. The reality, global oil prices went from over $100 lower and we didn't lower the cap at the same time. Now oil prices are starting to rise again, and there's a danger. And by the way, they started to rise partly because Russia was cooperating with OPEC Plus to cut production, and so I think I have some concerns about holding on to the $60 cap, never mind lowering it to a more appropriate number. You have to remember that Russian oil production costs are somewhere between $10 and $30 per barrel. So you can set the price cap at, $40, and the Russians can decide whether they want to produce and export and get the money or not. So we should not have been scared. And on your question about the energy weapon, I think what Russia has proven is that it's not, unlike with gas, which they did use immediately after this phase of the war started in February. I think all indications are the Russians are not going to lower oil production drastically. Maybe they produce maybe 11 million barrels per day. So they talk about cutting 500,000 barrels per day. That's really more symbolic than anything else. They're not going to cut it by 2-3 million barrels per day because they remember what happened in the 1990s when the Soviet Union collapsed and the Russian oil production fell off. It took a long time to bring it back up again. So the consequences for the Russian oil industry are too large for the Russians. So I think the oil weapon is really an empty threat. But now that's me as a non-politician with no responsibility as an expert analyzing the question. Elected officials have different perspectives.
Yes, because the logical question there is what impact that might have on Europe itself and on the West, since a big part of Europe is dependent on Russian energy still.
Well, not so much anymore.
Yes,
I mean,
that's also
I
a
think
tendency.
Europe has done a tremendously good
Exactly.
job in the last 18 months to reduce their reliance on Russian oil and gas. I think, and this is not maybe polite for me to say as an American, Europeans already have very high energy prices because taxes constitute so much of the price that the consumer has to accept. Whereas in the United States, we're very sensitive to gasoline prices. We're very politically sensitive to gasoline prices. So why was the oil price cap put in or suggested by the Americans in the summer of 2022? Well, we had congressional elections coming in November. Gasoline prices were already above $4 a gallon. And, maybe some people would worry, well, what happened to our political fortune if gasoline prices go from $4 to $5 a gallon? So that they were trying to prevent a bad scenario from their point of view. I think similarly, as you know, we have elections coming, a bigger election, presidential election coming up in 2024. So I think it'll be even harder in 2024 to do things. So what I've been encouraging through groups I work with as well as individually is to say that we need to tighten enforcement of the current sanctions. We need to lower the oil price cap, and we need to find additional sanctions, such as with liquefied natural gas, LNG, that Russia's exporting in large quantities now, with, by the way, G7 investment. French companies involved, Japanese companies are involved in this Arctic 2 project. So, we have to look at ourselves and what we're willing to sacrifice for the Ukrainian victory that we all say we want.
You mentioned taxes and high taxes and how that affects already the price in Europe. Can we talk about the bigger picture, though? What has this war shown us? Maybe it is a wiser strategy to have a more like deregulated policy towards energy development itself, like gaining the shale gas or like renewables, like making it cheaper somehow to develop renewables. I mean, what should be globally from the policy standpoint? Should there be some changes?
I think there may be a couple of different lessons that we should learn from this. One is don't depend on one supplier too much. So diversity of supply from different sources is important. It's like you have better insurance if you didn't get 40% of your imports from one country, right? As Europe did with Russian gas, for example. And so that was overly dependent on one country, and you don't know what that one country is going to do. So for all of us, diversity of supply is a good thing. I think in the medium to longer term, you would say that a transition to renewable energy should be accelerated because by its nature, it's widely distributed rather than concentrated in say, one pipeline or one source of supply. The shale oil, shale gas question is difficult for me as an American to comment because we don't understand why the Europeans are so reluctant. Because obviously, the shale revolution, we call it, in the industry, has completely changed the American oil and gas landscape. We now produce more shale oil and shale gas than conventional shale oil and shale gas. We never could have imagined doing that. New Mexico, the state in the United States, now produces more oil than the country of Mexico. I mean, it's hard to imagine what a radical change that is, and from our point of view, improvement of our security of supply. Europe wants to import from the United States. It has the need to import from the United States. So we'd like to see more development in the United States of export capacity for LNG and buying our oil and so on. But why don't they explore and develop indigenous European resources? That's very difficult. I mean, I understand some of the political barriers, but it's still very difficult to understand why you would not tap local nearby resources, which by definition would be more secure, that you can control much more than to import it from West Africa or the United States or Latin America. Why would you do that if security of supply is high on your priorities?
My last question on the sanctions and their effectiveness. What role could have countries like Georgia, for example, and let me explain what I mean. How important it is to have this unity towards these international sanctions, because what happened in Georgia was that when inflation and prices started soaring, Georgian government pointed to the businesses that, for example, Russian oil was cheaper and it would make prices come down. So Russia's oil Russia became #1 market for oil imports for Georgia. From the one standpoint, it seems wise, probably from the political and maybe even from the economic standpoint, but on the other hand, it gives Russia to have those revenues, right?
Well, I made the point at the podium that basically, I mean, I put it in different words to you now, that you cannot blame a country for looking after its own interests. And so you have to persuade them, if, let's say, the West would have to persuade a country like Georgia, like India, like Turkey, like a lot of other countries, not just China. People talk about China a lot, but it's not more than China, why it is in their best interest to help us, right? In terms that are meaningful to them. I mean, for example, what does it mean for territorial integrity when any time a strong neighbor can take over the territory of another country? How stable a world will we be living in? But economically, what we need to do is to present Georgia with some alternatives or substitutes to what they may see as or India or any other country, a short-term economic advantage to do business with Russia. What alternatives are we giving instead, so that Georgia would feel that it is in our interest to help the West and the sanctions coalition against Russia because of the war in Ukraine? And I don't think we've done a very good job, because we, in the West, that we tend to say to third countries that you should just do what we ask you to do because we're sanctioning Russia. And they say, and Georgia's not alone there, well, why should we? You know, because it is cheaper for us, or whatever the reason is. So as I said, our diplomacy needs to be much more nuanced and skilled in thinking about how to persuade these third countries, including Georgia, why it is to your advantage to help us rather than to help Russia evade Western sanctions.
So you think candidate country status is not enough?
Well, it could be. It could be, but it depends also, in Georgia's case, on how receptive your government is to that prospect, right? But it's definitely, I mean, what I would say to Georgians, not the government, because I have no relationship with the government, but Georgians would be, that would definitely be in the mind of countries in Europe or in the United States or in Brussels when they talk about whether we should grant Georgia a perspective to join European institutions or not, on how cooperative has Georgia been to things that were in European interests. No, I would not dismiss this as a factor.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
What was new in business this week? Our reporter Natia Taktakishvili will sum up this week's business news and outlook for you.
GT Motors presented a digital installation inspired by BMW XM design. The XM is BMW's most powerful high-tech SUV. Its sculptural design has been created with a completely new innovative vision. GT Motors became the official partner of BMW and Mini Cooper in Georgia last year. Since then, the number of sales increased 25 times compared to the previous year. During 1 year, the company sold more than 270 vehicles. As for the future plans, the project of a new BMW showroom is being developed, which will be one of the first showrooms in the region created according to the standards of updated BMW concept. The company had a very important news during the year, including the opening of a new temporary showroom, the introduction of limited edition models such as the M5 CS and M3 CS, as well as the introduction of new models for 2023, such as the new 7 Series, the new X1, X5 and X6. Anna Chechelashvili, head of the marketing and sales department of Marriott Hotel, declares that the state and private sector should work together to attract high-spending tourists to Georgia. According to her, Marriott Hotels worked at 80% capacity last summer, which is significantly lower compared to the last year. She explains tourist flow reduction by the decrease in the number of travelers from the Gulf countries. High-spending tourists traveled to Georgia in 2021 and 2022 because Georgia quite actively opened for travelers despite the pandemic. Now the pandemic is over, all countries have removed regulations and these tourists have been distributed to different countries, she said. As for the September-October, Anna Chechelashvili declares that quite interesting corporate groups are already entering the country, which gives hope that the current result will increase significantly by the end of the year. Both branches of City Mall located in Saburtalo and Gdani districts will be expanded, Anna Zedgenidze, the head of marketing of the company, noted while talking to Business Morning. Despite the saturation of the market, the company claims that the customer number increase gives the City Mall the opportunity to introduce additional brands. City Mall is constantly researching the retail sector and it's clear that this sector is saturated at this stage. However, our internal statistics and indicators give us the opportunity to start large-scale projects that involve the expansion of City Mall Saburtalo and City Mall Gdani. Of course, all this is due to the fact that City Mall has a large number of loyal customers who should be offered a more varied assortment exclusive brands, that Zedgenidze told BMWG. Children's clothes and accessories brand Krko is expanding its exporting area. Georgian-made clothes have entered the US market at this time. Tamar Mesarkishvili, the founder of the brand, told BMWG. According to her, 80% of the children's clothes produced by them are exported to France, Great Britain, China, America, Germany, Japan, and now to the USA. The founder also notes that compared to the previous year, the production of the brand increased by 10-15%. According to Tamar Mesarkishvili, company had to increase prices due to the expensive raw materials. In addition, she notes that the lack of workforce is still a challenge. Children's clothing brand Krko was founded in 2016. The brand sells all kinds of children's clothes and accessories, hats, gloves, bags, and embroidered collars. The number of employees depends on the orders and sometimes it reaches 80. Luca Polare opened its first branch in Baku. The company invested $250,000 to develop the brand outside the country. The director of the company, Tia Tabagari, notes that the company has been working on the opening of the first branch of Luca Polare on one of the main streets in Baku since the beginning of 2023, which is an important step for the development of the brand. According to her, Luca Polare will export it to Eastern countries after Baku. Azerbaijan market is quite similar to Georgian market, so it's very interesting to work there. We can safely say that Georgian brand Luca Polare has become an international brand which will gradually appear in the cities of different countries, Tia Tabagari declares. Luca Polare is an ice cream cafe producing chain that offers customers more than 80 types of ice cream and exclusive coffee. The brand has been operating on the Georgian market for 15 years and currently has 23 branches in 5 cities across Georgia. Hotel Gistola, located in Svaneti, declares that there was a lack of tourists during summer in Mestia. According to Irakli Gurciani, founder of Gistola, the hotel worked with half load between June and July. The hotel was half empty in June and July. For some reason, there were no tourists at all in Svaneti. In August-September, we already work with 100% load, although the season is already finished. Maybe in January for the new year, there will be high demand again, and then by the end of April, the occupancy will not even be 5%, says Irakli Gurciani. According to him, 90% of the vacationers of Gistola were foreign visitors. A large number of them were from Asia as well as from Poland and Czech Republic. As of him, the cost of a single room was $90 and a double room $100. Starting next season, each will increase by $20. Hotel Gistola in Mestia has been operating since 2021 and consists of 45 rooms. The investment of the hotel amounts to $5 million. The first online confectionery cheesecake begins the industrial production of American desserts along with corporate and retail sales. Its founder, Veko Dodashvili, spoke to BMWG about the company's concept and future plans. We were the first to offer real cheesecake to the customers. Before that, there was a different idea, and it's still in the society. They think cheesecake is a cottage cheese dessert, but it's made with cream cheese and has completely different taste and texture, says Dodashvili. Cheesecake products are sold in various facilities of HoReCa sector in addition to their confectionery. Cheesecake was founded in 2019. The company produces 20 types of desserts, the price of which ranges from 3 lari to 13 lari. The company employs 8-12 persons depending on the season. Hotel Arge had to increase its prices by about 20% this year. The manager of the hotel, Elena Papunashvili, told BMWG. Hotel Arge includes 30 different categories of rooms, a wine cellar, a conference hall, open and closed restaurant spaces, and an open swimming pool. The complex offers wine tasting and culinary masterclasses. The hotel has been gradually developing since 2018. The total investment volume exceeds 3 million lari. The hotel hosts both domestic and international visitors. The number of employees with us varies depending on the season, said Papunashvili. Hotel Arge has its own wine cellar. It produces 5,000 bottles of wine annually, and it's planned to increase this amount soon. The hotel and wine cellar Arge is located in Kakheti, just 3 kilometers from the city of Tel Aviv, in the village of Ruispiri. The hotel complex has been hosting foreign and Georgian customers since March 2018. Arge includes 33 rooms where a total of 120 guests can be accommodated.
The construction of the 5-star hotel Pontus Rotana Resort and Spa in Gonio has already started. Rotana, a brand with an international reputation, will manage the premium class hotel project on the Black Sea coast. This is the first project that Rotana is implementing in Georgia, and its exclusive partner is the Georgian development company Pontus Development. Representatives of the companies held a ceremonial event in Gonio regarding the start of the construction of the complex, where they presented the project to local and international partner companies and interested investors, and provided detailed information about the project. What will Pontus Rotana Resort and Spa offer to vacationers? What will be its distinctive features? And when will it host the first guest? Our journalist Lika Megutnishvili will tell us more.
Hi there, thank you for your time and your hospitality. We are now in the area where 5-star hotel Pontus Rotana Resort and Spa Gonio will be located in just few years. I would like to talk about this project and get more information. First of all, what is the total cost of this project and how much has been invested so far? Irakli, please.
Thank you for your question. Totally, during 4 years period that has already started 8 months ago, we're gonna invest 70 millions in this project. By now, we have already invested 12 million USD, and we have already finished the basement part of the project, and our construction team is working daily to speed up the process and finish the project before the official date what we already announced.
Tell us the details of the project. What does Pontus Rotana Resort and Spa Gonio include, and what type of infrastructure do you offer to users?
Thank you, Lika, for the question. First, I want to say we're very proud to be associated with Pontus Development on this project. It's going to be a very exciting resort. As you can see, you are on site today, so you can see the location is stunning. You will have from the resort views on the natural, picturesque location, whether you look at the mountain or on the sea. The resort will be catering for all kinds of customers. It will have a high number of rooms with different layouts, but in addition to the room component, the hotel will be connected to a state-of-the-art casino for the gaming part. We will also have a very well-equipped spa, gym, and kids entertainment area. In addition, of course, to a beautiful and vibrant lobby, food and beverage outlets, and high-end food and beverage outlets that will cater to the market as well. One more thing to add, that the resort will have its private beach with direct access to the beach as well.
Very nice. Irakli, what is the total built area in this project, considering the large number of the rooms?
Total construction area is 40,000 square meters. Totally, the building will be 28 floors, starting from underground floor where all BOQ areas will be located and some casino facilities. We're going to offer 3 different restaurants in the hotel and the rooftop bar as well.
I think what's very good with this resort is how the rooms are split. The majority of the rooms are single bedrooms, but they are split between king-size bedrooms and twin bedrooms, totaling almost 350 rooms from the total count. But also we have about 136 junior suites, giving the customer an additional space for those consumers that would like to have that type of rooms. And then we have 1-bedroom suites and 2-bedroom apartments as well. So it's a very diverse layout that offers something for every type of investor and every type of hotel guest.
And it's also interesting in what price segment will it be presented, and if you can tell us what will be the cost of the hotel room.
Okay, so I will talk to you about pricing. At Rotana, we price our hotels in a very dynamic way. We use techniques in revenue management depending on the market, depending on the season, and of course, depending on the nature of the product. Today, one of the things we are really thrilled about being partners with Pontus Development is that we are very confident that our partners will deliver a very high-end quality product in the market. This will, of course, help us to position the resort in terms of pricing as an upscale resort in the market. And in addition to having an excellent product, excellent location, and great facilities, Rotana will come in with our usual strive for excellence to deliver a service that is really unparalleled with the competition in the market, which will also help us position ourselves in a very good position for price for value, but also in that upscale market segment.
Okay, Irakli, who is working on this project? I mean, architects, designers, and etc.
Thank you. First of all, our teams, Pontus team and Rotana team, is working on daily basis to make the project more feasible, more comfortable, more attractive. In addition, we have international and Georgian architects, designers, consultants, engineers involved in the project. Also, I want to highlight that in the project we tried to bring all the national and international cultural specifics to make the project more attractive. Some cultural identities that are in UAE market and Georgian culture, Georgian national art and elements we are implementing in the project totally. And this makes the hotel attractive, and it will deliver the hotel the service that will keep and meet the requirements for all type of customers, especially from Middle East, from Europe, and Georgians as well.
Okay. How long will the construction work of the hotel last, and when will it be put into operation?
We are planning to finish the construction in 2026. We will start an operational part in 2026. I just want to highlight that starting from 2025, we will start hiring the people, hiring the personnel. We will appoint a GM of the property, and he will start the operational part. So, as I mentioned yesterday on the opening ceremony, the first official signing ceremony with the Rotana team and the Rotana Corporation was in Independence Day of Georgia in Abu Dhabi this year. So we will have an official opening ceremony in 2007, 26th of May. And this is a very important date for us, for our country, and for our company.
Of course. Eddie, who will be employed in this hotel and who will provide their training?
Rotana always has a strategy to make the best use of the local talent available in every country. We will be really looking forward to attracting the best talent that we can see in the area from the Georgian population. We've been here a few days. We've been very well received by our partners, and we already fall in love with the Georgian culture. We see a lot of similarity, and we think there's a great opportunity to select the right talent from this market, but also introduce our own training programs and induction programs, so that we can, the same thing you mentioned, that Irakli mentioned, on mixing the two cultures, bringing our own service culture into an already existing very good culture for the market. So our target will be to get as many of the local talent as possible. Of course, sometimes you would have expatriates coming in, but our focus will be on getting as much as possible the local talent and working with them to give them the Rotana DNA and the service culture of Rotana.
Irakli, as far as I know, all people who are interested in real estate can invest in Pontus Rotana Resort and Spa in Gonio. Please tell us about this opportunity.
Pontus Rotana Resort and Spa is exclusive investing opportunity for high net worth individuals, for funds, for companies who are seeking to invest in real estate and have a guaranteed income in a hotel business. We are offering for investment hotel rooms. For some individuals it can be floors. For right now we only started to open 7 floors out of total 27. We'll see the demand. Our team, our marketing team and sales team is working in daily basis to attract international investors in the project and make our partnership more international and bring to Georgian market more investment out of marketing our project internationally.
Eddie, as I know, this is your first property in Georgia. First of all, I want to know how attractive was Georgia for you, and do you plan to engage in other projects here again in the future, maybe with Pontus Capital and other partners also?
So first of all, again, we're very excited to be here. Rotana's strategy has always been linked in some way to the strategy of the United Arab Emirates, and we always try to follow where our government goes as well. So we've noticed the amazing ties that are starting to build between the UAE government and the Georgian government, and this for us is a very good catalyst. But of course, I think the highlight of our excitement being here is that we believe we found the right partner to enter this market with. Pontus Development has a great know-how and presence in the market, and I think we share that expectation of excellence, where they're going to deliver a really good product, they're going to deliver it on time, and we're going to come and deliver that service. So for us, this is the best recipe for growth. And of course, we do aspire and hope to continue working with Pontus Development on other projects, maybe in the capital, also in the ski resort, with obviously the presence that they have in the market, and us coming in also with more hotels.
Thank you so much. And Irakli, tell us about your future plans.
We had an opportunity to visit some interesting locations near Batumi, and with Rotana and with our team, with our architects and designers, we are preparing some interesting projects, and we are working on it right now. Our goal and our strategy is to expand Rotana existence in the market in 2-3 years period. Our strategic locations are Batumi, our strategic location is Kobuleti, Tbilisi, and ski resort, probably Goderzi ski resort.
Thank you so much for your time, for interview.
Thank you.
And we will definitely follow the development of this project.
Excellent.
Good
Thank you
luck.
very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Thank you.
Let us check out now on Georgia's economy and its performance this week. The Checkpoints will present you with this week's news and outlook.
Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili on Friday said the government had raised its growth forecast for 2023 for the earlier 5 to 6.5% and was adjusting the state budget with a 50 million lari increase based on the increased growth rate. Garibashvili noted the budget was increasing for the third year running and enabled financing very important programs over the recent years. We have already started working to the new 2024 budget. We discussed the first version of the budget with the Minister of Finance and his team, as well as the format of Economic Council, and we will present it to the Parliament at the end of the month, around September 29, Garibashvili added. United Airports of Georgia, operator of the Kutaisi International Airport, published a tender on the website of National State Procurement Agency, which plans to build a new airport apron. The total cost of the project is 11.4 million lari. According to the terms of the tender, rehabilitation should not restrict the movement of airplanes. During the rehabilitation process, the traffic of the transport should be ensured, so the work must be carried out in stages with a high level of safety. It's stated in the tender conditions. According to the document, the bidder must present the experience of performing similar types of work in the last 3 years, the contract value of which is not less than 60 million lari. Acceptance of proposals in the tender starts on October 4 and ends on October 10. We made a decision to introduce a visa-free regime for Chinese citizens. Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili announced this before the start of the government meeting. According to the Prime Minister, one of the main interests is the arrival of more tourists and economic investment. Tourism is very important for us. Last year, we received $3.5 billion USD of direct income from tourism. This year, we expect more. We are working in other markets. We want to attract more tourists to the country. You know, I had a very successful visit to China, which today is the second economy in the world, the strongest economy. One of our main interests is to strengthen trade and economic relations with China, to attract more investments from China, as well as to attract more tourists, to bring them to Georgia. My visit served this purpose, and in general, strategic cooperation, the main component will be strengthening of trade economic relations, the Prime Minister said. The Minister of Economy of Georgia, Levan Davitashvili, declares that many international companies from different countries, including China, are interested in the Anaklia Port project. As the minister mentioned, the first stage of assessment may be completed in September or early October, and then the technical conditions will be clarified. Anaklia is first of all a very important economic project for Georgia. Anaklia is a commercial port which should ensure more cargo turnover in Georgia and the Middle Corridor. It's an important part of our logistic and transport strategy. We consider the development of Anaklia in this regard. This is a context to be considered When choosing a partner, you know that we are in the South Caucasus. The port of Anaklia is an important constituent link connecting the East Asia countries and Europe, in particular the West, the minister said. On September 13, the Monetary Policy Committee of National Bank of Georgia decided to decrease the monetary policy rate by 0.25%. The monetary policy rate stands at 10%. Inflation, as expected, is below the target rate, and in August, annual inflation was 0.9%, while core inflation stood at 2.5%. The role of external factors in the formation of inflation has eased significantly. In particular, since previous year, prices of raw food commodities on international markets have decreased, and international shipping costs have approached almost its pre-pandemic level. These, alongside with the appreciation of lari, have reduced imported good prices in Georgia. Tight monetary policy and low inflation expectations are also contributing significantly to the decline in inflation. As a result, domestic inflation has also been declining at a relatively slow speed, and in August it equaled 6.1%. It expected to decrease even further during the year. The MBG continuously monitors the developments in the economy and financial markets and will use all available tools to ensure price stability. The next meeting of Monetary Policy Committee will be held on October 25, 2023. In Quarter 2 2023, the monthly average number of Georgian resident visitors aged 15 years or more equaled to 1.3 million. Those monthly average number of visitors on the territory of Georgia corresponded to 1.6 million according to the National Statistics Office of Georgia. The monthly average number of visitors has increased by 14%. As for the number of visitors, it has increased by 25% in comparison to the corresponding data of the relevant period of the previous year. In Quarter 2 2023, the monthly average number of tourist visits to Georgian residents amounted to 670,000, which is 18.3% higher than the indicator of relevant period of the previous year. In Quarter 2 2023, the main purpose of majority visits was visiting friends and relatives. In the reporting period, majority of the visits accounts for Tbilisi and Imereti region. In Quarter 2 2023, the monthly average expenditure during the visit equaled to 233 million lari. This indicator is 11.8% higher than the indicator of the relevant period of the previous year. As for the average expenditure per visit, it has been reduced by 10.5% and equal to 145.8 lari. The new 23-24 educational year in Tbilisi kindergartens will begin on September 18. Tbilisi City Hall reported to welcome the new year. 3 new kindergartens has been established in Samgori district, Cholroti district and Inktanisi district. In preparation for the new educational year, more than 100 kindergartens received infrastructure upgrade to provide children with safer and better equipped environments. Notably, the Tbilisi Kindergarten Management Agency introduced a new registration system this year aiming to accommodate the demand for public kindergartens as effectively as possible. Over 15,000 children have already been registered for the new educational year, with a total of 188 kindergartens serving the capital. The start of the new year will be marked by festive and enjoyable events across all kindergartens in Tbilisi on September 18.
OECD country risk classification classifies Georgia's risk as high already for 16 years since 2007 without change. The country risk classifications are meant to reflect country risk. Under the participant system, country risk encompasses transfer and convertibility risk. The risk a government imposes capital or exchange controls that prevent an entity from converting local currency into foreign currency and or transferring funds to creditors located outside the country, for example, in cases of force majeure, for example, war, expropriation, revolution, civil disturbance, floods, earthquakes. According to the OECD methodology, the country risk classifications are not sovereign risk classifications and therefore should not be compared with the sovereign risk classifications of private credit rating agencies, CRAs. Conceptually, they are more similar to the country ceilings that are produced by some of the major CRAs, OECD explains. During the last Investors' Council meeting in Georgia, the American Chamber of Commerce, AmCham, activated this issue, saying that investors are troubled by the low assessment in the index. The countries are assessed on the 0 to 7 scale, where 0 is the best score and 7 is the lowest. Georgia maintains 6 as its score for consecutive 16 years already since 2007. The Checkpoints interviewed the executive director of AmCham, George Welton. Mr. Welton, thank you for your time and thank you for taking our questions. In the first place, why did AmCham pay attention to this OECD index? You raised the issue at the last Investors' Council.
Yeah, we brought this issue up because it had been brought to us by a few members that the country risk profile was currently lower than it should be, and that had negative consequences on the cost of borrowing for certain kinds of companies.
It seems that this low assessment, it is like 6 points out of 7, has been in place for around 16 years. What could help to that stagnation in just one index?
So basically as you say, 0 to 7 system, we are number 6 at the moment, while other countries like Uzbekistan, Bangladesh, and North Macedonia, which actually do less well than we do on other indexes like S&P, Moody's, and Fitch, they actually have a score of 5, so they actually do better than we do at the moment. And it would be better if we could actually move ourselves to a 5 in order that people who are importing goods from the West can actually do so, borrowing money from export credit agencies at a lower rate. The way we basically get to that point is that the Ministry of Finance, which is currently working on this, needs to go and have discussions with the various countries involved in making this OECD assessment, and make the argument to them that the risk rating is currently too negative.
You mentioned Fitch Ratings and S&P, but when you read OECD's indexes methodology, they kind of underline that these are like separate assessments, and that Fitch's and S&P's sovereign country assessments, these ratings are different than what OECD does, and that these kinds of indexes are not really comparable.
Sure. I mean, they of course make the point that this is a different index, and all of the indexes have their own rules that are regulating them. But the underlying logic behind the indexes is very similar. So it would be very strange for us to do very well in S&P and very poorly in Moody's, for example. And so as a result, you tend to see those two ratings moving together. So in this case, you would also expect really this classification, though it is a separate one, to move with the other ones. I think basically the reason why it's been out of line is that they don't make a reassessment on a yearly basis unless it has been brought to their attention by OECD member countries that this current rating is perhaps out of alignment. It's not something they just redo every year. So the necessary first step for that is that we need to kind of get organized and make that argument directly to the countries. The countries will then get OECD to do another assessment, And I'm pretty confident that if OECD does another assessment, that we'll see the rating improve.
Maybe the index and the research itself, the study itself that OECD undertakes is more open to you because it is quite close for us. I mean, we cannot see the analysis behind the logic that OECD has behind this number, this 6. Do you know like which components contribute the most to this stagnation? They have like different components. It is economic, political, transfer, exchange rates, sovereign, and also geographical. So which ones are problematic in these analysis, in this OECD's analysis?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding, and I have to admit I don't claim to be a deep expert on this subject as a whole, but my understanding is that the issue here is not that they have made an assessment we disagree with, it's that they haven't done an assessment very recently. Because unlike some of these systems, OECD are not sending someone to the country to redo the assessment every year. So we need to basically convince the OECD member states who are effective in this decision making to just redo the assessment. Exactly what they will find and exactly what they will change to move us up in that rating is hard to be particularly clear on. But we have improved against the standards of other credit rating entities over the years for a range of reasons. And I would expect those same reasons to lead to an improvement here.
And my last question, and thank you for your time again. So you recommend that the Ministry of Finance has to have communication with OECD directly, so that this so that there is a clearer picture on this index, right? Because if your investors approach you, then this means that this is the index that investors globally take into account.
I mean, I don't know to what extent investors generally are looking at this index. This index officially plays a very specific role, and that is that it's the index that is used by export credit agencies of national countries when they are deciding whether to give credit to exporting entities. Now this is pretty complicated, but what it basically means is if you are importing, if you're a Georgian who is importing a large piece of physical equipment, then you can basically borrow money to import that product at a cheaper rate than you would do otherwise. And that basically means that things like hydropower stations and wind turbines and hotels and other big physical investments potentially become cheaper. And so that just encourages everyone to invest more and more easily. So yeah, I mean, I think there is good reason to believe that if that improves, it will help the investment climate generally, but not necessarily because people are looking at this in the way they look at Moody's and Fitch to decide whether Georgia is investable, but just because it will make it cheaper for them to invest in the country.
Thank you so much for these explanations. Thank you, Mr. Walton.
No problem. Thank you.
This is all for today. We'll meet next Sunday, 11 a.m. sharp. Before that, check us out regularly on BM.G for more updates on Georgia's business and economics and beyond.
The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.